Greetings, folks. Welcome. In today's economy, human capital is very important to the economic development of regions. In fact, Ed Glaeser, in his book Triumph of the City, noted that human capital, far more than physical infrastructure, explains which cities succeed. In our analysis, we'll define human capital as the education, skills, experience, and know-how used by workers in the production of goods and services. Just like physical capital includes machinery and equipment that workers use in the production of goods and services. Although our definition of human capital is quite broad, it covers skills, education, experience, and even a person's physical strength, most studies on the topic, especially older ones, use educational attainment as a measure of human capital. In particular, a lot of research on human capital focuses on whether or not a person has a college degree, and when studying regions, the percentage of workers with a college degree. In a different video, we looked quite a bit at the relationship between the economic development of U.S. regions and college attainment rates. And although the amount of formal education the person has completed is certainly a good measure of human capital, it seems a little incomplete if we're interested in knowing the types of skills and knowledge that workers possess. To overcome this limitation of using college attainment to represent human capital, many recent studies use occupations as a measure of human capital. This is because a person's occupation tells us quite a bit about their skills and knowledge. Let's take a look at two different occupations and how they can reveal the types of skills and knowledge used on the job. And for this example, I will use engineers and economists. Of course, I'm an economist, and many of my friends from back in the day are engineers. If you look at these two occupations, there's certainly some overlap in the skills used on the job. Both require reasonably high levels of mathematics and abstract thinking and computer skills. But there are also some differences in the skill sets of economists and engineers. Economists have a base of knowledge about microeconomics, macroeconomics, and topics such as public finance, and some economists know about accounting and finance. Engineers, on the other hand, have a base of knowledge about mechanics, drafting, and subjects such as physics and other sciences. But what's kind of cool about an occupation-based approach to human capital is that knowing someone's job provides a lot of insight into the person's skill set and knowledge they use on the job. One of the best-known occupation-based approaches to the study and practice of economic development is Richard Florida's ideas about the creative economy. In the creative economy, Florida includes occupations such as engineers and scientists, educators, artists, and computer programmers. As it turns out, economists and engineers are both counted in the creative economy. Of course, the glue that holds these occupations together is that they all rely heavily on the use of creativity. In Florida's ideas about the creative economy, he stresses the importance of the 3 T's to economic development. These include talent, technology, and tolerance. U.S. employment numbers show that creative occupations are growing over time as a share of the total workforce, and some metropolitan areas have creative economy employment shares that are quite high. There's been quite a bit of research on aspects of the creative economy, and studies find positive effects of having a creative occupation on earnings, resilience to job losses during the Great Recession of 2008, and other indicators of well-being. In this scatter plot, we look at the relationship between the economic development of U.S. metropolitan areas and the percentage of workers in creative economy occupations. The Economic Development Index of metros is plotted on the up and down or the y-axis. It's a combination of an employment growth index, an income index, and a third index that represents the persistence of employment, that is, the ups and downs of employment over time. As such, the Economic Development Index is a measure of the growth of good jobs in a region. On the x-axis, or side to side, we measure the percentage of the workforce in creative occupations as of 1990. And you can see that there's quite a bit of variation across places, from less than 20% of the workforce to over 40%. The scatter plot has an upward sloping trend line, and I show it as a solid line because the relationship between the economic development of U.S. metros and the creative economy is statistically significant. In other words, the analysis shows that the relative size of a region's creative economy back in 1990 helped the growth of good jobs moving forward. The scatter plot included all U.S. metropolitan areas, and there's about 380 in our sample, but it's also interesting to look at how the creative economy affects different size regions. In this figure, we summarize the relationship between the Economic Development Index and creative economy for states, and all metros, that's what we just looked at in the scatter plot, and then subsets of large metros with 1 million or more people, and then smaller metros. The bar heights in the figure represent the size of the change in a region's Economic Development Index, in terms of standard deviations, relative to a 1 standard deviation increase in a region's creative economy employment share. The second bar, labeled as all metros, summarizes the scatter plot that we just looked at. The height of the bar tells us that a 1 standard deviation in a metro's percentage of the workforce in creative occupations corresponds with about a 0.3 standard deviation increase in the Economic Development Index. The bar is shaded to indicate a statistically significant effect. Overall, the results show that the percentage of workers in creative occupations helps the economic development of states and metropolitan areas, and the result holds when we look at metros with 1 million or more people, and then smaller metropolitan areas too. When focusing on the size of metros, we see that the creative economy is particularly important to the economic development of metropolitan areas with 1 million or more people. A 1 standard deviation increase in a large metropolitan area's percentage of the workforce in creative occupations corresponds with about a 0.5 standard deviation increase in the Economic Development Index, again, when focusing only on large metros. The effect is much smaller in metros with fewer than 1 million residents. It's also interesting to dig a little bit deeper into exactly how the creative economy affects the economic development of large metros. In this figure, we look at the effects of creative occupations in large metros on the employment index, income index, persistence index, and the overall economic development index. The bar labeled as Economic Development Index, which has a height of about 0.5, was shown in the previous figure. The new information shown in this figure tells us that whereas the share of creative jobs in large metros does not have a statistically significant effect on the employment index, that is, the bar is not shaded, the creative economy has a very large impact on the income index, which is a measure of the productivity of regions. In fact, a 1 standard deviation increase in a large metro's percentage of the workforce in creative occupations corresponds with about a 0.6 standard deviation increase in the income index when focusing only on large metros. The creative economy has a statistically significant impact on the persistence index of large metros too. So let's take a moment and summarize what we learned about the effects of the creative economy on U.S. regional economic development. First, the analysis shows that the creative economy helps the economic development of states and metropolitan areas, especially large metros with 1 million or more people back in 1990. Second, the results suggest that the creative economy is associated with good jobs, things like productivity and employment persistence, more so than the employment growth of regions. Just like we can use a person's occupation as an indicator of the extent to which they use creativity on the job, we can also use a person's occupation to figure out if they use all sorts of other skills. For example, an engineer would possess skills related to problem solving, technology use, and computers. To match occupations to skills, we use data from the Occupational Information Network, which is just ONET for short. To give you an idea of what I mean, this scatter plot shows the relationship between the economic development of metropolitan areas and an indicator of idea generation skills in the workforce. The Economic Development Index, which is plotted on the y-axis, is the same old one that we've used a lot. It measures the growth of good jobs in a region. To build the indicator of idea generation skills, which is plotted on the x-axis or side to side, I use numbers on the types of occupations present in the region, along with data on the extent to which jobs use idea generation skills. In the metros shown in the right side of the figure, places such as Boulder, Colorado, San Jose, and San Francisco, the type of workers in the region are more apt to generate new ideas as part of their jobs. The scatter plot has an upward sloping trend line, and I show it as a solid line because the relationship between the economic development of U.S. metros and idea generation skills is statistically significant. In other words, the analysis shows that this skill in the workforce helps the growth of good jobs. In addition to skills related to idea generation, I used workforce data for U.S. metros to come up with indicators for a very wide range of skills. In this table, I show some of the skills found to have a positive and statistically significant effect on metropolitan area economic development. The analysis found that skills related to programming, persuasion, critical thinking, mathematics, and time management are important to economic development, just to name a few. We just covered quite a bit of material, so I think this is a good place to wrap up our look at occupations in economic development, and we'll end with a few key takeaways. First, occupations are a useful way to represent the human capital of people and places. Occupations tell us about the creativity, skills, and knowledge that workers use in their jobs every day. Second, our analysis of occupations across U.S. regions shows that places with higher shares of creative workers tend to have higher economic development. And we also uncovered numerous types of skills that help the growth of good jobs. Finally, we found that creative and skilled workers are especially important to the economic development of large metropolitan areas.